She was a humble black woman, working quietly and living with dignity. But everything changed the moment someone touched her without respect. In that instant, her millionaire husband's question shook the room. Why did you touch my wife? And what followed left everyone speechless. This is HB Vibes, your home for shocking and emotional war stories. Hit like, smash that subscribe, and let's dive into the drama. James had always been seen as just a quiet, hard-working man in the construction company. He kept to himself, never bragged about his wealth, and dressed simply, even though very few people knew he was, in fact, a millionaire from wise investments and inherited land. His hands were rough from years of labor, and his colleagues thought of him as just the black worker who never complained. But what no one realized was that James carried a heart full of dignity, loyalty, and deep love for his wife, Clara. She often visited him on site with lunch, smiling warmly, greeting everyone with kindness. Their marriage was the anchor of his life, the reason he worked so hard. That's why the moment James saw someone lay a hand on her shoulder in a way that didn't sit right, something stirred in him he had never felt before. It was a Friday afternoon when Clara arrived, carrying a basket of homemade food. She found James surrounded by coworkers, all laughing and sharing stories during a break. But then, something happened that broke the harmony. One of the supervisors, Richard, a man known for his arrogance, leaned too close to Clara, patting her shoulder and whispering something James couldn't hear. The laughter around the site fell silent. James's chest tightened, his jaw locked. He rarely lost his temper, but this felt different. Every ounce of respect, every ounce of loyalty he'd built at work seemed to teeter on the edge in that moment. James walked over slowly, his voice deep, calm, but firm. "Why did you touch my wife?" His question wasn't shouted, it wasn't filled with rage. But the weight in his tone froze the entire crew. Richard laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. "Relax, James, it was nothing. Just being friendly." But James didn't move, his eyes locked on Richard, unwavering. Everyone could feel it. The respect James usually gave so freely was gone, replaced by a storm held tightly in check. Clara put a gentle hand on her husband's arm, whispering, "It's okay, James." But he shook his head slowly. "No, Clara, it's not okay. Respect matters. I work side by side with these men every day, and I won't have anyone treat you without it." The workers around them didn't dare speak, but in their hearts, they felt a strange mix of admiration and discomfort. They had always underestimated James, but now they saw something more, a man whose quiet dignity could turn into unshakable strength when it came to protecting his family. By Monday morning, the story had already spread beyond the site. Some twisted it into gossip. James overreacted. Others defended him. He was right to stand up. Even Clara's kindness was being discussed by strangers who hadn't been there. James kept working as usual, his focus sharp, his silence louder than any argument. But deep inside, he wondered if his question had changed how people saw him. That night, Clara reassured him. "You didn't embarrass me, James. You reminded me, and everyone else, that love means protecting what's sacred." Her words gave him peace, but he knew the matter wasn't finished. The company was watching, and Richard, the supervisor, wasn't used to being challenged. A week later, the company's owner called James into his office. James expected trouble, maybe even termination, but instead, the owner leaned back in his chair, studying him. "I've heard a lot about what happened, James. And I've also learned something else. You're not just any worker, are you?" James froze. Very few people knew his financial standing, but the owner had done his homework. "You've invested wisely. You own land worth millions. And yet you still come here every day, working alongside men who think you're just another laborer." James nodded quietly. "Work is my dignity. Wealth doesn't change that." The owner smiled faintly. "That question you asked, why did you touch my wife, it wasn't anger. It was honor, and that honor is worth more to this company than anything money can buy." The weeks that followed changed everything. Richard was quietly moved off-site, his arrogance replaced by silence. The workers began treating James differently, not with pity, not with fear, but with a new respect. He was no longer just the quiet black worker. He was the man who reminded everyone that boundaries matter, that dignity matters, and that love is worth defending. Clara continued to visit, her presence now met with warmth and genuine kindness from the crew. No one dared to cross the line again. Instead, they often said, "James, you taught us something we won't forget." James never flaunted his wealth or his strength. All he ever wanted was a simple truth. Respect for his family, respect for the life he built, and respect for the love that carried him forward. Months later, James sat quietly in his modest home, watching Clara hum as she prepared dinner. He thought back to that moment, the question that had slipped from his lips like a thunderclap. It wasn't just about one man touching his wife. It was about a lifetime of unspoken rules, about the respect he demanded not only for Clara but for himself and his people. He realized that his question had awakened something, not just in Richard, not just in the company, but in everyone who witnessed it. A reminder that true strength doesn't come from shouting or violence. It comes from calm conviction, from the courage to speak when silence would be easier. As Clara set the table, James whispered softly, "You're my reason for everything." She smiled, touching his hand, "And you're the proof that love, respect, and honor will always win." The millionaire worker had never needed to prove his worth through money. He had done it with 7 simple words. "Why did you touch my wife?" And in those words, he became more than a man. He became a symbol of dignity, respect, and love that no one could ever ignore. If you felt the heartbeat of this story, give it a like, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to HB Vibes, where every story carries a lesson for the soul.